Is President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship constitutional? President Trump made history becoming the first sitting U.S. president to be present for those oral arguments at the U.S. Supreme Court. You see his vehicle right there. Now, he's back at the White House as of this hour, but he attacked the court ahead of today's hearing. He criticized its ruling against his tariff policies. He also says his birthright executive order would stop what he calls the sale of U.S. citizenship around the world. Ultimately, the fate of that order rests with those justices. So
today, Donald Trump made two very different kinds of history. The first was him being the first sitting president to watch oral argument take place before the Supreme Court. The second was being the first sitting president to watch his case fall apart in oral argument before the Supreme Court. And that is exactly what just took place today, and why Donald Trump, furious as ever, is storming out of the Supreme Court. Because his attempts to overturn birthright citizenship have blown up in his face, and it is another in a long line of legal losses for Donald Trump. And it is no surprise.
Have I got that right? The president signed the executive order. He says no more birthright citizenship. Several states sued, and judges in those states called a timeout, can't execute this order. Now what?
Right, Terry. He sought to, on day one, overturn the mandate of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which says anyone born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a United States citizen. Donald Trump signed that order wanting to eliminate that, set the wheels in motion to have his administration set out new guidelines, new regulations for how citizenship is awarded in the United States.
This case makes no sense and is a last-ditch effort by Trump to, I guess, throw a little racist red meat to the base, but also stop anyone he possibly can from voting in the midterms, considering how the polls are looking right now. And it is why Donald Trump had this rambling mess to say yesterday about how he predicted this case would go.
And this is not about Chinese billionaires or billionaires from other countries who all of a sudden have 75 children or 59 children in one case or 10 children becoming American citizens. This was about slaves. And if you take a look, slaves, we're talking about slaves from the Civil War. And if you take a look at when it was filed, all of this legislation, all of this, everything having to do with birthright citizenship, it was at the end of the Civil War. The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves and the protection of the babies of slaves.
Oh yes, the great legal mind of our generation, Donald Trump, saying, well, quite frankly, it's not about 900 kids or 90 kids or China. It's about, well, we don't know what it's about. Donald Trump once said that the Declaration of Independence was signed after the Civil War. This is not a genius historian who is connecting all the dots and making some case that outlines a misinterpretation of the framework of the Constitution. Donald Trump is just angry. He's bitter, and he's trying to undermine our democracy in whatever way possible. And the fact that we are even seeing this oral argument is a stain on the Supreme Court, and Donald Trump has given us lots of those. But it's not going too well. It's why Trump stormed out. We're going to get to that in a second. But I want to start with an update on how the case is actually going.
We're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out to, where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
For more than a century, the 14th Amendment has given children born on U.S. soil citizenship, regardless of their parents' legal status. But Trump's executive order would exclude children of unauthorized immigrants and temporary visitors. The president sat expressionless as his administration lawyer, John Sauer, argued the 14th Amendment was written to grant citizenship to slaves and their children.
It did not grant citizenship to the children of temporary visitors or illegal aliens.
Humiliated Trump watches own justices tear his citizenship case apart. Conservative justices poked holes in Trump's argument as the president looked on. Even some of the conservative justices on the Supreme Court expressed deep skepticism in the Trump administration's argument for upending birthright citizenship. As the justices took turns launching a series of brutal questions at the Solicitor General after he made the government's argument on Wednesday, Donald Trump was sitting in the courtroom watching.
There are those sort of narrow exceptions for ambassador foreign public ships. Tribal lineage is an enormous one that they were very focused on in the debates as well. But what I do is I invite the court to look at the intervening step, which is the enactment of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And there they didn't say subject to the jurisdiction thereof. There it says not subject to any foreign power. Now, if you go back to Blackstone and Calvin's case, they say it does not matter if you are subject to any foreign
Chief Justice John Roberts, along with Justices Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, asked probing questions that suggested they were not buying the argument to dramatically restrict birthright citizenship. Roberts used quirky, while Barrett said she was puzzled. At the root of the case is the 14th Amendment, which states all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. But the Trump administration argued that the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment was meant to grant citizenship to freed slaves and their children after the Civil War.
Citizenship.
The 14th Amendment did have to do with formerly enslaved people, but the administration argues that was it. He contends birthright citizenship does not apply to the immigrants in the country illegally. The ACLU insists his executive order is unconstitutional.
Ask any American what our citizenship rule is, and they'll tell you. Everyone born here is a citizen alike. That rule was enshrined in the 14th Amendment to put it out of the reach of any government official to destroy.
255,000 children are born every year in the U.S. to non-citizen parents. Trump says the order would only apply to children born after it takes effect. Legal experts dispute that.
The ACLU, which was arguing the case on behalf of the children born in the U.S., slammed the Trump administration for trying to overturn a century of Supreme Court precedent and U.S. Constitution. As we see, Donald Trump's lawyer saying, we're in a new world where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen. John Roberts, not buying it, said it's a new world. It's the same Constitution. Yes, Donald Trump should not be able to upend the legal framework on which our country rests because of planes and air travel. That seems a little bit sketchy and maybe not the most sound legal argument. But this is what Trump's lawyers do. They go in, they sling some, they hope that they can get a favorable judge or favorable justices. And unfortunately, in the past, they have. But it at least seems like from the skepticism has kind of been projected out, what we've heard in these initial oral arguments, that Donald Trump, he does not have a winning case. And it is why he got fed up, probably fell asleep a little bit, and stormed out of the Supreme Court, leaving furious, of course. So Donald Trump left. He didn't want to stick around. He didn't want to hear anymore. And to me, that is probably not a good sign for Donald Trump, but it is a great sign for birthright citizenship. It is also, we must reflect upon the fact that we are only in this position, and these, conservative justices are only responding the way they are in the case of Amy Coney Barrett. Puzzled John Roberts, confused, concerned, not appreciating the argument that's being made, because they allowed this. They allowed Donald Trump to return to power, right? They are just as complicit as anyone, as Mitch McConnell, as Kevin McCarthy, as anyone who is unwilling to stand up to Donald Trump. They are complicit. And so if you do not like, as John Roberts has said, the partisanship that people view the Supreme Court with, the way that our government has increased dramatically the amount of political violence that exists in our country, then John, you should do a little looking in the mirror, because it is because of this Supreme Court. Now, Donald Trump certainly not happy if he's not sticking around for everything. I'm sure a Truth Social post is coming. I'm sure there will be some sort of meltdown at some point. So do subscribe and stick around for that. Hit that notification bell because we're going to be covering it. But again, this is just part of Donald Trump's larger last-ditch effort to try to preserve any political power by attacking the very basis of our elections. And it comes as Donald Trump yesterday signed another executive order that will likely be quickly struck down, essentially upending the ability for most people to vote by mail, which Donald Trump did. And Lawrence O'Donnell and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse called it out, and I think a perfect takedown right here. Yeah, we'll start with the fact that this guy's polling is in the 30s. What is happening right now is disgraceful. Donald Trump knows that this is illegal. He knows his attack on mail-in voting is illegal. He knows his attack on birthright citizenship is illegal. More than anything, they are just trying to create a public narrative. And honestly, I think it's something that Democrats should learn from campaign-wise. Get caught trying when you're governing. Get caught trying. Do these things, right? Like, not try to overturn birthright citizenship, but in some effect, go out and try to make big structural change, no matter what it will run into. At least shift the dialogue. Donald Trump has spent his entire political career trying to shift and normalize the rhetoric that he uses, and he has been successful. How did we get to a place when he has been so normalized, where the outrage only comes when something truly unprecedented happened, but something unprecedented happens every single day? Donald Trump has got us, and by us, I mean the mainstream press that doesn't do its job, so accustomed to his outrageous behavior that he's able to fall asleep in cabinet meetings and nobody bats an eye. He's able to say that he wants to overturn 100+ years of precedent and nobody bats an eye. They say, well, Donald Trump is trying to make a legal argument before the Supreme Court. This is an attack on the very basis of our country, and that is the only way that it can be covered. And if it's not, it's a failure of whoever is doing so. But Democrats, learn a lesson from this. Try to change the dialogue. Be big and be bold, and say that government work. Be like Zoran Mamdani, okay? And Zoran's having success with everything that he's doing. But he was told on the campaign trail that he would run up against the buzzsaw of corporate Democrats in Albany and Kathy Hochul. And he is moving them right now through public pressure, through organizing, rallies with Bernie Sanders and other progressives and democratic socialists. We need to take a lesson not in upending the Constitution, but in how we communicate these things, and fundamentally change how people at least view issues before we fundamentally change the issues themselves. That is necessary. That is necessary for Democrats to succeed, and that is necessary to maintain our country and actually change the material conditions of working people. And that is what we are going to talk about every single day on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you.